Hello again. I'm Trip Rogers. He's the Hall of Famer Mike Scheck. We are the Fantasy Sultans, and we are back. It is season 4. Hard to believe it's August. NFL training camps going on. Preseason games started last weekend at the time we taped this, obviously, and we are getting ready for another season. Mike is tan, rested, and ready. The Hall of Famer is always ready to talk fantasy football.
I was born
Obviously,
ready. Yeah.
we have lots of things. I mean, the last time we got together with you on this podcast was before the NFL draft. I don't think I was terribly surprised at the draft, the first round especially. We knew it would be a quarterback draft. There was very little movement. I mean, you didn't have a lot of trades up. I mean, I think you knew the Vikings were going to take a quarterback, and they took J.J. McCarthy, and obviously that is a story that we have to talk about too. But the top 3 picks, I don't think were a surprise, and I don't really think anybody really shocked you in this draft, correct?
Well, I will say this. I saw 3 surprising moves. The first one being Atlanta choosing Michael Penix at number 8. Las
Okay,
Vegas
sorry, I
going
forgot about
after
that.
Las Vegas going after Brock Bowers when they drafted a tight end the year before and Michael Mayer. And then the Bills kind of whiffing on Xavier Worthy. And I thought those were the 3 biggest moves. Now, Atlanta move was interesting because they signed Kirk Cousins, we all know, in the offseason. It's a 4-year deal. Now, I would think, and one would think that he's going to play at least 3 years of that contract out. So that means Michael Penix sits the bench for 3 years. I mean, I kind of find that hard to believe. I know it's an insurance policy in case Kirk Cousins goes down, but you're talking about an NFL rookie quarterback drafted at 8, and he's going to sit the bench for that long of time. I don't buy it. I
Okay,
don't
but
buy
the
it one
other,
bit.
I want to flip. Okay, but I want to flip that around before we move on to the other 2 points. In the NFL, you've got to have 2 quarterbacks. You have to, because of the 17 game schedule, injuries, and teams that are successful have someone who can step in. I mean, I'm not saying they're as good,
Yeah.
but I think this was a situation where Atlanta, I, they had so many needs, and I remember, I remember it. There weren't any surprises. Yeah, where am I? Where was I? I mean, this was a move that just absolutely Atlanta fans killed. And again, I don't know why, but again, the other part of it is that Kirk Cousins was coming off a Achilles injury, and you didn't know whether he was going to come back. So this could be a kind of an insurance policy. But unfortunately, if the Falcons get off to a bad start, although again they just hired a coach, so I'm sure this was something that he agreed to. But Raheem Morris, I'm talking about, by the way. But I think it puts a lot of pressure on, and if Arthur Blank tells him to win now, I think that would be a problem with that. All right, number 2, you said Las Vegas taking a tight end.
Yeah, and I think this is a huge move too because you talk about a tight end that they drafted 1 year ago in Michael Mayer. Now he didn't set the world on fire, neither did the Las Vegas Raiders last year. The whole Jimmy Garoppolo experiment didn't bear out well, and they're going to be rolling with 2 quarterbacks that you don't hear too much of, two big names. So I mean, I'm not so sure about the offense, but I know that Vegas does need an electrifying player, and Brock Bowers does fit that bill. So that could be the reason why they did draft him, but I don't know. Couldn't they have used another, like a wide receiver or somebody else?
But Bowers could be a guy who could play multiple roles in that offense. He could play wide receiver. I mean, again, being a Georgia grad, I mean, I saw him how many times. Georgia was on every week here, and Bowers, I think, again, you question because he had an injury last year, and it was a knee. But He's a game changer. And the other part of it is with Vegas at that point, it could have been best available athlete. And he was the best available athlete. That's and time will tell whether or not it was a good move. But Mayer, he was a hero to some fantasy teams last year because he was the only consistent thing they had going in Las Vegas on the offense. Because they struggled. And Devontae Adams, if you watched receiver, you saw Devontae Adams just had enough of this. So I don't know. I don't know. Your last point, sir.
My last point is Buffalo, and they whiffed on Xavier Worthy, and of course the Kansas City Chiefs go after him. They make a trade, or they trade up in the draft, and then Buffalo trades down. This was like, you take a look at the opponents, and this is Buffalo's biggest mistake I think that they made. They've had difficulty getting past Kansas City in the playoffs to get to the Super Bowl. Kansas City went to the Super Bowl, won it. They are the elite of the AFC. What do you do if you're trying to defeat the elite of the AFC? You go blow for blow with your opponent, basically jab for jab, going after other players. And I think they whiffed on this player because Xavier Worthy has an elite status. He may not be the greatest in the beginning, although I do think he's going to have a good year with the Chiefs. He is going to be an elite player. And this is somebody that is going to connect with Patrick Mahomes big time. You want to talk about their receiving core. I mean, Hollywood Brown, we'll talk about that. His injury, which could keep him out the opening night. But I just think that he's going to see a lot more action, Xavier Worthy, than I think a lot of people think this year.
But again, you talk about Kansas City, and a lot of that offense will run through Travis Kelce, and that's the other part of this equation. The other side of it is that it was a very Midland receiving core. It really was last year. Granted, a couple of them had nice games in the Super Bowl. It was very Midland receiving core, and the fact that they have had so many problems in the offseason. I mean, I mean, Andy Reid's teams had these issues in Philadelphia. So this is nothing new. And again, we'll see. But, the time is coming. Xavier Worthy was a good pickup. I'm not sold necessarily. I mean, last year they were raving, oh, this guy's going to replace, and I was going to say, oh God, why can't I think of his name now? From the Giants. Help me. The car thing this year.
Oh yeah,
you know what I'm talking. Okay, we're both blanking. That's fine. No big deal. People know what we're talking about. But because I don't think I'll be with the team. But that's beside the point. Anyhow. All right, we move forward off the NFL draft. Now let's move to news and notes as we head into fantasy season. And obviously, already injuries are playing a key. Today it was announced that J.J. McCarthy will be out the season. Meniscus surgery, he's done. Hollywood Brown with Kansas City, you just mentioned it real quick. Shoulder issue, may or may not be ready for game one. Jahmyr Gibbs tweaked the hamstring on Monday, although the Lions say he will be fine. Those are a couple of the injury news. And then, of course, what else? I hope I didn't steal all your thunder.
No, you didn't steal all my
thunder.
You're
the Hall of Famer. I'm not. You're
what about what's going on with Brandon Ayuk? I mean, that's not an injury, but of course we've got to talk about that. This has been an interesting story to follow in the offseason. Requested a trade from the 49ers because San Francisco was not willing to give him that pay increase that he wanted. Maybe he would go to Cleveland. Maybe he would go to New England. The 49ers said no. Then it seemed like they were going to work out a deal with Pittsburgh, and then that doesn't happen. This past week, it sounds like they were close on a long-term deal with him to stay with the team. Now it sounds like he could go back to Pittsburgh. It's like a flip-flop game here. I don't know how this is going to play out, but this is very interesting with the 49ers. I mean, this is something we've been following all in the offseason with Brandon Ayuk. Would he be traded or not? Big receiver for Brock Purdy, it would be a big loss.
Well, the other part of it also when you're dealing with San Francisco is the McCaffrey.
Yeah.
McCaffrey is going to be held out of the preseason. He had an injury, and there's some questions about McCaffrey. But again, this is a San Francisco team that has been to the championship game now 2 years in a row. I mean, the NFC championship game I'm talking about. And then they went to the Super Bowl last year. They've been in a couple Super Bowls over the last few years. Again, as we mentioned on the last podcast, told you Shanahan would fail down the stretch. I knew he would. Knew it, called it.
Knew it.
But I I think right now the Brandon Ayuk story and it kind of dovetails the other big holdout story
Yep.
is CeeDee Lamb in Dallas. And you know, Dak wants an extension and they're going to give it to him, but CeeDee Lamb certainly deserves an extension. And the fact that Jerry Jones is playing hardball with him just is kind of blows my mind to a certain extent. I had CeeDee Lamb last year, and he was fantasy gold. And we'll talk about our top fantasy players coming up in just a little bit. But I think that story bears watching too, because I think all eyes are on Mike McCarthy this year. I think and of course the other story that we can mention real quick here, the ESPN story last week about the Philadelphia Eagles and how their season came off the rails. And I thought it was a prescient comment when somebody said, and I forget who, I think maybe it was Dan Patrick, but either Dallas and Philadelphia will fire their head coaches, both, or they'll both keep them. And they both kept them.
Yep.
And I think the bullseye is on McCarthy's back, really is. Sirianni also has a target on his back too, but they're in a division where, let's face it, it's Dallas, it's Philadelphia, the Giants, and Washington. See ya. I mean, it's that bad. It is that bad in that division.
Do you think that the Giants maybe make a move at coach if it doesn't work out this season with the Giants?
And all right, I want to, this was something I wanted to talk about. When I talk about the bullseye, I think there's a bullseye on the Giants, on Shane and Dable because of Hard Knocks.
Yep.
Because basically they showed the world what they were thinking. And what they were thinking is Daniel Jones may not be the guy. We can get a quarterback, we're going to try and get him. Because Daniel Jones is not doing it. But they also said, well, we're not going to pay Saquon. And Saquon went to Philadelphia. And the problem with that is, they didn't want to pay a $40 million quarterback to hand off to a $12 million a year running back. Okay, I get that. I understand that. Yeah. But the problem is, you made the prudent financial move last year, and you should have come through with the money for Saquon. Now, back to your original question. I think there's a huge target on both Shane and Dable. If Daniel Jones does not work out, and this year is not good for the Giants, I honestly think you could see those two go out the door. I think I'll be curious to see, but I think Bill Belichick is in play. And I think next year, I'll make this prediction, next year, Bill Belichick will be coaching either Philadelphia, Dallas, or the Giants, because I think he wants to get back into coaching. I think those three teams can give him a base to coach. And I think that would be the final penmanship on his career. Agree or disagree?
Yeah, I agree, but I will say this. The Giants with Daniel Jones, maybe he hasn't had a fair evaluation because they really haven't given him that legitimate wide receiver he's really needed. And now they have drafted Malik Neighbors, who could be that guy. So we'll have to see how this season plays out. But I definitely think the leash is going to be short in New York if it does not work out for Daniel Jones or Dable, because I agree with you. I think that Bill Belichick is going to land somewhere. I mean, surprisingly, we're talking about the Philadelphia Eagles just like 1 year removed from the Super Bowl. And now you're talking about firing a head coach. That's a quick turnaround.
But the other part of this, though, remember, the Philadelphia Eagles went to the Super Bowl with two coordinators. One had been hired,
Right.
the other went right after. So both of their coordinators that got them to the Super Bowl left. They brought two new coordinators in last year. And that, again, the way the season fell apart for them, it was the same thing from the year before. The only difference is they were able to rev it up at the end and go through the playoffs and get to the Super Bowl. But I think I said this. I said this to you. You're seeing the same thing from them, and it happened 2 years in a row. So what was the only constant there? Nick Sirianni.
Yeah.
So again, I don't know. And again, I think that also plays into fantasy too, because I don't have a lot of confidence in Mike McCarthy. I have a lot of confidence in CeeDee Lamb. I have confidence in Dak Prescott. I have no confidence in any of the running backs for Dallas. But you say that, still McCarthy who's calling the signals, who's making the calls. I think I have more confidence in the Philadelphia Eagles offense than I do the Dallas offense. That's why I think the Eagles will win the division. So, but I think it plays into it. We're so happy you joined us. I mean, we're back. We're back. It's season 4. Yeah. We're back. We're talking.
Oh yeah, we're
right.
in form. Yep.
Time to move on to our top 12.
That sounds like a plan.
All right. Give it to me. You're the Hall of Famer. You go first.
I will lead it off. I'll say that Christian McCaffrey, without a doubt, has got to be the number one player off the fantasy board. Over 2,000 yards from scrimmage, 21 total touchdowns last season. Across his 6-year NFL career, he's played in 75 games, finishing top 12 in 50 of those. And for you math majors out there, that's 2/3. So I don't know why anybody would not want to take him as the number one overall pick. I know last year it was between him and Justin Jefferson, and I kind of went the other way and went Justin Jefferson. But you know what? This year I am going Christian McCaffrey and saying he is number one, hands down. And number two, I will go right behind him and say it's Tyreek Hill of the Miami Dolphins, because what an outstanding season he had last year with the Dolphins. Now, again, a lot of that success will ride on Tua Tagovailoa, and the Dolphins can only go as far as Tua, but for certain, I think that Hill will be a big part of that offense. Let's move to number 3, and we talked about CeeDee Lamb, and we'll have to see how the holdout if it continues or not, because I think that he could slide down the board a bit further. And if he slides down the board a bit further, that would be a value pick, I'd say. But that's something that we're going to have to watch very, very closely here as we get into the coming weeks. If a deal gets done sooner than later, without a doubt, CeeDee Lamb is going to be number 3. All right, let's move on here to number 4. And I'm going to say Jamar Chase in Cincinnati. All eyes were on T. Higgins in the offseason. Would he get traded or not? Well, he's still in Cincinnati. And Chase's success only goes as far as Joe Burrow. And Joe Burrow last season, we know he had the calf injury, and that set him out. So, but I definitely think that Chase and Burrow are 2 big players that you want to take on your teams for this upcoming season. I think they have bounced back seasons. All right, moving on, I'm going to go to Minnesota wide receiver Justin Jefferson at number 5. Now, you're saying, why number 5? How come not further? Because he is actually in the ADP ranking. I've seen him one pick. I really think that he is going to have a bounce back year. You talk about the quarterback situation, J.J. McCarthy. That may have hindered the situation, but they do have Sam Darnold, who isn't the greatest quarterback, but he is a game manager. And look what he did in San Francisco last year, a couple of games for Brock Purdy. Now, again, you could argue that he was working with a offensive guru in Kyle Shanahan, but I will say at the same time that I think that Darnold is probably a step up from J.J. McCarthy being a rookie. So this is actually a better situation for Justin Jefferson. Number 6, I'm going to go with Breece Hall for the New York Jets. He had a good season last year, despite shakiness at quarterback. Of course, Aaron Rodgers, we know what happened the first game of the year, and then it went all downhill at the quarterback play. But Breece Hall still managed to put up great stats. So I see him with Rodgers back in the lineup, and as long as Rodgers is healthy, Breece Hall, I think, is going to have a big year. All right, let's move on to number 7, and I'm going to say that's going to go to Bijan Robinson. Now, last year, didn't we have Bijan Robinson around this spot, or weren't people saying Bijan Robinson mid-round 1? Oh, how did that work out? And we said it on the program. Risky pick. Well, who got in the way of Bijan Robinson? Arthur Smith, who is no longer there. Raheem Morris takes over as head coach, and I think that Bijan is in for a good year. I like Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts to both have good fantasy seasons. I know a lot of people have been back and forth on Kyle Pitts over the years, and I've questioned it too. But again, this is a different offensive scheme, and regarding Bijan Robinson, they will feed the ball to him early and often. And we've already heard it in some press conferences with Raheem Morris that they plan on using Bijan to the fullest. So definitely a guy that, yeah, you could probably take at that spot, maybe even earlier. Some could argue that he's a top 5 player, and why not, given his talent. All right, let's go on here. And let's say at number 8, I'm going to go with Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, he could be further down the board because of his injury, but you know what? I think that Gibbs is going to have a good year in Detroit as long as he stays healthy. Of course, there's always the asterisk, as long as he stays healthy. But yeah, definitely Amon-Ra St. Brown is another player who I think is in that category for a wide receiver who can definitely get the job done. If you need him late in your drafts, at least in round 1, if you have a late round pick, he would definitely be a player that you want to get. I'm going to go with A.J. Brown at number 9 for the Philadelphia Eagles. And we talked about the Philadelphia Eagles with their offense. It was a bit shaky, but A.J. Brown put up some good stats last year. And as long as the Eagles move forward and don't have any setbacks, we've talked about the marriage, or the honeymoon, we should say, between Hurts and Sirianni kind of being over. Well, I think that A.J. Brown is going to have a good year. All right, let's go to number 10, Jonathan Taylor. That's right, Jonathan Taylor. Now, he was once in the conversation as a top 3 pick, and then injuries he had. The past 2 seasons, it has been injuries for Jonathan Taylor. But guess what? 2024, it's a healthy campaign for him. Anthony Richardson could spoil some of the party for him, being that Anthony Richardson is back. He'll get more goal line touches, but I would ride with a hot hand in Jonathan Taylor. Number 11, let's go to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Yeah, I talked about him a bit earlier for Detroit. He was a player last year, kind of a round 2 pick. I think with the season that he had last year, Goff will be cooking. You'll also see Sam Laporta in that offense getting it going. I definitely think that Amon-Ra St. Brown will benefit from that offense and the success that they had last year. I think they'll build on it this year. And then finally, rounding out the top 12, I'm going to go with Garrett Wilson for the New York Jets. That's right. I'm picking 2 Jets in my top 12. Yeah, Garrett Wilson had a great campaign last year, despite, again, Breece Hall, as I mentioned, the shaky quarterback play by the New York Jets. Again, factor in the equation, Aaron Rodgers. What happens with that situation? He is 40 years old now. How will he do coming off of the ACL injury? We'll have to see what happens, but Garrett Wilson will be a big-time player for that Jet offense.
Okay. All right. I like it. I like it. All right.
What do you say?
Time.
What say you?
All right. Yep. Say I. Yep. All right. I'm going to, I'm going to take a little bit of a contrarian view with this. So I'm not going to go into a lot of specifics because you've covered them very well. Because you're the Hall of Famer, I'm not.
Right.
I'm the schlub who just kind of talks. What can I say? Um, I think Tyreek Hill. I'm going to go with him number one, and I would say this because I like that Miami offense. I like the coach. I think they have a mission. They're on a mission,
Mhm.
and I think we gotta mention Hill. Also, don't sleep on Devon Achin. He's coming back too, and he had a breakout year. If you were able to grab him on waivers, I did the first week. I mean, he was money in the bank. Injuries will be a key though with that too. Number two, I'm going to go with Justin Jefferson. I think Minnesota going to be better than people think. But again, Sam Darnold not thrilling me at this point, quarterback. But I think Jefferson can overcome that. I'm going to go CD Lamb number three, and I think I'll keep him there because of the fact the Dallas Cowboys want to win now. Jerry Jones wants to win now. I think they'll get him back. He'll be in camp. I don't think it's going to be a question. I would take him at number three overall. I like him. Number four, Brees Hall of the Jets. Mike, I like your thinking. The Jets are on a mission this year, and Aaron Rodgers is on a mission. This team's defense, they improved it, although the Hassan Reddick stuff is kind of bothersome. But they improved this defense. This defense
Oh
was
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
They get a decent offense. Aaron Rodgers stays healthy. This Jet team could be dangerous. But then again, it's the New York Jets. hence why, when the Giants do badly, just wait. The Jets will do even worse. Christian McCaffrey, I'm putting at number five. I'm not feeling the love for Christian McCaffrey. I'm not feeling the love for San Francisco. The Ayuk thing really kind of bothers me. I think that's going to hurt the offense and the chemistry. Number six, I'm going Jonathan Taylor in Indianapolis. I think the key for Indianapolis is going to be quarterback Anthony Richardson, and they're saying he's back. I thought Jonathan Taylor was great last year. I mean, he wasn't, blowing my mind number one pick great as he was a couple of years ago, but I thought he was very serviceable, and he would be a guy I would take right now at number six. Number seven, I'll go Bijan Robinson. Again, Atlanta blew out their coach because of what happened with Robinson last year. You've got Raheem Morris in there. I think you've got you've got a very good quarterback, I should say, not a decent quarterback. I mean, he's a very good quarterback. So I think he'll be good. I feel that Bijan will do better this year. Jamar Gibbs from Detroit, yeah, that injury bothers me. But Amon-Ra St. Brown is pretty good too. I mean, I like him too. But and again, I don't know. It could sneak in the back end of the top 12. In fact, actually, no, I have him left next on my list. So there you go. I'll put both of those back to back. I mean, you're gonna get one or the other. I think you can't go wrong. Amon St. Brown was just phenomenal last year. Detroit was a surprise. Detroit will be good again this year. Um, it's funny because I'm going to throw a quarterback in here. I'm going to go Jalen Hurts. Again, Philadelphia's offense went through him. And I think he's a guy you're going to want to get. And again, this plays into my draft strategy this year. You're in the back end of the first round. I'm going to look to get a quarterback. And I know that may surprise you, but because we've always said, let's wait on quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But I think in the NFL this year, quarterbacks are going to be the key. And everybody is going to try and get a quarterback. And CJ Stroud was a guy who nobody thought about, was drafted as a second quarterback. My daughter drafted him as second quarterback, Stephanie, and she made the playoffs. So everybody's going to try and find that, but you got to have a good quarterback to start off with. I wouldn't mind an early pick on Jalen Hurts, so I'm going to go with him there. Garrett Wilson, you're right. He was good. 2 Jets in the top 12. I don't have a problem with that either. And then last but not least, I'll go A.J. Brown with the Eagles because, again, the Eagles, I think, are going to be loaded for bear this year, and they're going to be ready to go. All right, we got a couple minutes left. So I got to ask you, what are a couple of the things you're looking at as we head down the stretch? Because it's getting close to draft time. Is there a couple of, couple stories, couple people, couple players? Talk to me.
Well, I'll say make or break players are
Okay.
ones to follow this year,
Okay.
and that being T. Higgins in Cincinnati. 9 received contract extensions or tags, and he was left out of that. So I really think that, he's going to have or have to have a big year. Otherwise, he's not going to be staying in Cincinnati. And we've seen these type of situations happen before. These guys are on the last year of their contract, and they have these monster type years where they get that extension. And we've seen it time and time again. And I think the situation is kind of the same thing. On the flip side, Dak Prescott. I mean, what's going to happen with him? With the Cowboys, he is definitely, if things don't turn around for Dallas, he is not going to be the quarterback. And I'm actually hearing, and I don't know if this will make you happy or not, Trip, but I'm actually hearing that he's being linked to New York if it does not work out with Dallas, that the whole McCarthy experience this year. So we'll have to see what happens there. But I think this is definitely a player. And then another player I'm watching is Deshaun Watson. Here's a guy who now is in the third year of his 5-year ginormous contract. What was it, like 230 million? And he hasn't lived up to any of that hype yet. He's had injuries and he's come back and played a bit, but he hasn't lived up to that hype. And I think that if Cleveland, that contract could be voided come 2026. But I don't think if it works out this year, I think he could be out the door.
And you talk about Cleveland real quick. One of the other things that it will bear watching this year is this stadium issue,
Yeah.
because this is going to be a polarizing issue in Cleveland, because as much as they love the Browns, and they do love the Browns, trust me, the team performance is going to be tied into it, because they're going to say, do we really want to build this dome, or do we want to pay less and just renovate the stadium? I think it's tied into it. But your point is very good. Deshaun Watson, he is not, and we were high on him last year. Last year, right? Yeah, last year we were high on him.
Yeah.
And we were high on him, and he did nothing, and he got injured. Nick Chubb also was injured. We didn't mention Chubb.
No, we
And
didn't.
I just realized that, and I'm like going, that's who I wanted to mention in my top 12, because I think Chubb is going to come back with a vengeance this year. You talk about, player, he's going to come back with a vengeance this year too. I mean, it's funny because we sit here, and every week we sit here and we come up with all this stuff, and we get all this stuff. And then next thing you know, it's like, oh, I forgot that. Oh, I forgot that. Oh, I forgot to say this. Oh, yeah, But you don't do that because you're the Hall of Famer. You're the Hall of Famer, Mike Shack. I'm just the nobody. I'm Trip Rogers.
Hey, how about Stephon Diggs? I don't think after week 1 and what we saw in the preseason, looks like the connection there between Tank Dell and CJ Stroud is getting going. And you can't forget, you got Nico Collins in that offense, Dalton Schultz. So, I mean, I know that they brought in another, big name and an offensive playmaker, but at fantasy and what we've seen from Stephon Diggs in the past, I'm not very high on him. Are you?
Well, again, the problem is he's a me guy.
Yeah.
The story's out of Buffalo where he was a me guy. And I think that's, again, they got him out of there. They got him out of Minnesota. I mean, there's a trend here. And why would you get rid of your best offensive wide receiver? And the reason is because bad in the locker room. He's a bad citizen.
Yeah.
So you send him to Houston, and Houston, of course, could use him. I mean, I think they could use him, but you're right. I mean, you're absolutely right. But the other thing is Houston, I'm going to you got to temper. And I think people are not going to. They're going to be a CJ Stroud, and he's going to go maybe 2 or 3 in the quarterbacks. And I think that's going to be a mistake.
Yeah, I agree.
My opinion.
No, I agree with you. I don't think he's going to put up the numbers like he did last year. I just don't think it. Is he going to be good? Yeah, I think he's going to be good. But at that value position, no.
Absolutely right. He's the Hall of Famer, Mike Shack. I am Trip Rogers. We're the Fantasy Sultans. You can join us every week during the fantasy football season. Now, we'll be back just before Labor Day. The next time we'll drop, we'll talk about draft strategy. We will talk about players we're looking at. Preseason will be over. We'll be ready to go with the Fantasy Sultans. We do it every week. You can find us on Spotify for podcasters and YouTube. Just search Fantasy Sultans. Forget about my other podcast, Trips Take. You can find that also at those same spots. If you like the music of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, listen to WTRSradio.com. I'll tell you, it's good. It feels good. It's like an old shoe. Put the old shoes on. We're ready to go. Season 4 of the Fantasy Sultans. We're here to help you win your league. And that's what we do. We give you our information. Everybody uses it against us in our leagues too. But we give you the information you need. We are the Fantasy Sultans.
And you are not.